Still nothing. Mr. Nebb, why don't we go ahead and proceed, if we can, without the monitors here for us. It's already after 5:30, and we have people who have made an effort to get here. So we'll have your presentation on the large screen, counselors. We also will not be using the vote boxes this evening. It'll be all voice votes, roll call votes. So, yeah, try the request to speak buttons when we get started. Yeah, they're showing up. All right. All right. It's 5:32, and I'm calling the April 27th, 2020 special meeting of the Roswell City Council to order. Ms. Call, please call the roll.
Councilor Oropesa? Here. Councilor Stubbs? Here. Councilor Foster?
Here.
Councilor Kennard?
Here.
Councilor Best?
Here.
Councilor Sanchez?
Here.
Councilor Moore? Here. Councilor Peterson is absent. Councilor Roebuck?
Here.
Councilor Perry?
Here.
Thank you. He is participating via GoToMeeting, and Mayor Kintai?
Present.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Councilor Stubbs.
Okay. Mayor, thank you. I move that we approve the agenda for the special city council meeting for Monday, April 27th, 2020, as presented.
I have a motion by Councilor Stubbs and a second by Councilor Foster to approve the agenda as presented. Any discussion or debate? Hearing none, I'll go for a voice vote on this. All right. A yes or aye approves the agenda as presented. A no or nay rejects it. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, passes unanimously 9-0. And we just lost the first person. Mr. Nebb.
Yes. Are you able to bring up the presentation? Okay. Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council. as soon as I get the PowerPoint up here.
Might want to move the microphone a little closer, too.
I will do that. I'll speak louder, too.
Do that.
Just trying to behave. All right. Tonight I wanted to cover, I was asked to cover just a couple different things. As you're well aware, we're moving into our whole budget cycle. We're going through all of that, trying to figure out what to do with our budget. It is a continually changing atmosphere within that budget because of what we're dealing with COVID-19 and the oil and gas decreasing as well too. So I'll give you an update on where we're at with the budget and what we anticipate is going to happen. Just be aware that some of that information changes as we go along, as we learn a little bit more. And then one of the things that we are working on is a reopening plan for the city services. And I'll go through that. There will be some information in the slides that you'll find beneficial in your conversation because we address the CDC guidelines as well as the OSHA requirements for employee safety. And so we'll talk a little bit about that as we kind of go through these, how we're going to reopen some of our services. So really quickly, on the budget overview, we're estimating right now, we're building a budget based upon a reduction of 23% GRT for the budget year of 2021. That's a conservative number. We believe that it could be a little bit more. At the end of the day, we'll see our first picture of what the COVID-19 does to the GRT in June. So a month before our budget hits. But right now we had to set a budget. We believe that overall in the year we'll see a 23% reduction in GRT. We believe that July, the first 4 months of the year will be probably like 50%, 40 to 50% reduction of the GRT. And then it'll slowly, as the economy picks up, we're hoping that it will pick up to whatever that new norm is when we come through that. Because I think some of the things that have happened in the last few months will not come back in the same format that it had. The financial impact to the overall budget is a reduction of $10.3 million in personnel and operations. And the way we're working on the budget right now is an overall equivalent decrease is public safety will be reduced by 5%. All the other funds we're reducing by 20%. And that all adds up to that $10.3 million for personnel and operations. We are asking, or we will be asking the City Council to consider the ability to have an additional indirect transfers of about approximately $2.2 million. And there's a couple of conversations we'll have at Finance as well as when we start talking about the budget about moving some money from other pots into helping with the general fund. We are looking at service reductions. You cannot lose this much money out of a budget and think that things cannot change. So we're looking at fewer operational hours and increased fees. We're looking at right now open positions have been frozen and most are being removed from the budget. And so we'll bring those positions back as we see that we have the revenue in order to bring them back. We are consideration of retirements, furloughs, and the potential of layoffs. That's lower on the list, but in order to make that budget work based upon revenue to expenses, we may have to get into that level. We are doing projects and capital expenditures. We're looking at them to be equally impacted financially. So in the next month, we'll be trying to reprioritize the projects, and with many of the planned projects possibly being put on hold to do those reductions. So the nice thing about a project is that if you take it out of this year's budget, you can put it into a later year budget. And it just can kind of go down the line, and when the revenue becomes available again, you can do that project. So the trick or the key to this thing for the City Council is making sure that you prioritize the amount of revenue that we have to the expenses of the projects that we want to try to get done. Some of the budget adjustments, when you look at this, we did two different things. And so we had 3 months when we started this thing before this year's budget is completed. So starting at the end of March, I guess the first nice thing is that it looks like the actual GRT for what we were budget to actual for this year, even if we receive only 50% for the next 2 months in our GRT, we're still going to beat our estimate. So that is at least a nice small little thing that will be okay, at least with the budget for the rest of this year. But everything we don't spend this year goes into next year's budget. And that's the kind of the trick to this thing, as what we're doing. So we did a freeze of open positions. We froze certain projects, did a PO sweep. Again, we allocate a lot of money out there, and we sweep that back in, and we just say, all right, we're going to stop doing this work, and we're going to try to do it a little bit differently. We have looked at service, or we've done service closures for this year's budget. So the museum, a lot of our enrichment services are not operating for a lot of different reasons. We've had some individuals, because of the fear and the unknowns that come with the COVID-19, they've self-furloughed as well. So they're at home at no pay. They're able to keep their benefits running, as that's what a furlough does for you. And so all of that will apply additional savings to this year's budget that kicks into the next year. It appears like we're going to start off the year stronger with our cash moving over because of this nature by about $2 million for the general fund. And so that's going to help us in the long run. I guess there's some nice things happening along with all the hard stuff that we're doing, but really everything that everybody's been doing will help us move into the new year a lot better. The 2021 budget, there is not a service we have out there that will be unaffected. Every one of the things that we provide to our people, our citizens, will be affected to some level. We have removed most of the open positions from the budget, and again, what we'll be setting up through finance and everything is essentially a quarterly check, a thermometer check or a temperature check. Do we have any new revenue this quarter? Do we have less revenue? And we'll make adjustments to the budget as we walk through this thing. We've cut expenses, we've postponed projects. We're looking at changing services provided. So you cannot do that $10 million reduction of our budget without possibly reducing hours or reducing the service that's provided. So we're looking at all that. Over the year, as I've stated, we'll be looking at the fee structure for certain services to increase available revenue, and then we'll further decrease other expenses. Some of them take a little bit longer to have the conversation on, can we tighten this service up but still provide what the vision of the city council is? And so that's the trick, or the pieces that are going with trying to set this budget, is trying to figure out how can we move as we see the economy do X. And so that's where we're at with the budget adjustments. This is just a slide just starting to show where we think the reductions will be. As I said, there's $10.3 million coming out of that. And it doesn't equate directly across there, because you can see that in 2020, our personnel and operations is in the green. Our budget was $81 million, and we had $27 million worth of projects. In 2021, we'll see our personnel and operations go down to $75 million, and we'll see projects decrease down to $21 million. That's a 20% cut on our projects. And so what happens, why that doesn't equal out to exactly the 10.3 for the personnel and operations, is that we also had some increases going into for the next year's budget. So we have to remove those increases and then decrease by the 5% and 20%. So it equates to more, but the budget that we were preparing was higher than last year's budget, is what I'm saying. And so we're cutting a little bit differently for that. But this shows $11 million. Once you tie the projects in there, that's our estimate as to what we're going to have to cut from the budget to meet the expectations of what we already presented. Okay, going from the budget, going into looking at reopening our services. This is the public health order that's been done by the governor in New Mexico, and it has been extended till May 15th. It suspends operations of all businesses, nonprofit entities, except for those deemed essential. It also states in there that government services at all levels can remain open. We've reduced some of our services for the three reasons there. We wanted to make sure, similar to like the adult center, that we close the adult center because most of our seniors that do attend there are more susceptible to the serious impacts of the virus. The whole idea about trying the stay-at-home orders is to try to slow people down so that we're not coming into contact with each other as often. And then, of course, to reduce the budgetary expenditures, because again, we've already talked about that. if we rely so heavily upon the GRT or the economy in order to bring in the money to provide our services, when that's impacted, we have a negative response on the backside of this thing. So we did shift, or we closed many of our services. We are starting to look at reopening city services and looking at trying to figure out how to do that. And that's what the remainder of these slides are for. We're looking at a May 1st, 2020 to open some of the services, and then other services we may delay a little bit longer based upon these assessments, and I'll explain the assessments here in a second. But to consider reopening city services, the following criteria should be met. There's 5 different categories there. Managing the workplace for employee safety, identifying where and how workers might be exposed to COVID-19, establishing policies, practices, and workplace controls, support respiratory etiquette or hand hygiene for the employees, customers, or work site visitors, and perform enhanced environmental cleaning and disinfection. These 5 criteria come right out of the CDC guidelines as what's important for when businesses are looking to operate within this climate. These are the conditions that they recommend or provide guidance for, saying these are the things that you should look at. And I break it down a little bit farther because I'm going to use these slides in order to help department heads understand what we need to do for each one of our services before we kind of reopen them, because we want to make sure that our citizens are safe and our employees are safe. And so this is the managing the workplace. You can see it's a very basic thing. It's just trying to minimize contact, making sure that you wash your hands. We did go through, we stretched out our employees. We run a 7 to 7 schedule, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. for most of our departments to spread out our people so we don't have that many people in one area at a given time. So that's essentially what managing the workplace means. Identify where and how workers, citizens might be exposed to COVID at each one. So this is where we'll go through the assessment of each one of our departments. And we will figure out a way that can they operate safely for in-person contact in a more formalized structure. And both the CDC and OSHA provide guidelines to this guidance. So CDC essentially provides 3 classification levels of exposure: those low, medium, and high. And so depending on what your jobs are and what your duties are, your responsibilities, that's what the impact is as far as how often will you come in contact with somebody that has been potentially infected. And then OSHA goes through that, and they provide 3 different controls to look at for those employees, for those citizens that are in those classifications. And that's engineering, that's physical barriers. So when you go out and you look at some of the convenience stores at the gas stations, they put up sneeze guards, essentially is what I call them. And that helps provide that extra protection between a customer and the employees. And so engineering the physical barriers is one big part. Administrative is the education that you're providing to the citizens and the workers, as well as the policies associated to each one of those classes of low, medium, and high. And then, of course, the PPE, the personal protective equipment that's required to go into those policies is very important, because you don't have to have everybody in an N95 mask. That's the highest level of filtration that you can have. You don't have to have everybody in that. That's why the homemade masks have some ability to assist with the contraction of the disease. So the established policies and protection, this is going through those assessments, looking at each one of these classifications and looking at the controls. And so the low exposure, engineering controls for low exposure is that there are no engineering controls that need to be happening if you're not in contact with the public. So somebody out at central control that is watching the monitors or checking the wells, they're not in contact with the public. So they don't need the extra engineering controls as far as what that is. They may need to monitor the health communications. They may need to collaborate with other means of that for the administrative controls. And then additional PPE is not necessary for them at that point in time, because they're not coming into the contact with those that could potentially be infected. The medium exposure, there are some contacts. I would liken this one to the clear plastic sneeze guards where feasible. This could be potentially like at the library. So if somebody's coming in and out of the library to check out books and everything, then you want to provide that additional protection between the employees and the citizens. Then the administrative controls are considering the potential of wearing masks to help prohibit that, face shields, keeping everybody informed about what's going on, limiting the contact by the separation and everything else. And then workers that have the medium exposure can wear the homemade mask and of that nature as well. The high exposure level, there is no really additional engineering controls for that because it is primarily on our first responders and how they contact or come in contact with the public. And so they have, they're going to have to wear the mask. They're going to have to wear the gloves. They're going to have to wear all that gear that goes with that. So there's a lot of information over on the PPE section for the high exposure. The administrative controls, though, are that we may consider offering enhanced medical monitoring of all those employees. And so we did essentially a drive-through testing last week for those first responders. And so on an occasional basis, we probably should be able to test those first responders more often because they're more susceptible to coming into contact with somebody with the virus. And so essentially that's what those administrative controls are talking about. You get into the support respiratory etiquette, and again, this is just making sure that we have hand sanitizer, we have the wipes. When we get done with this meeting, Spectre will come through and they will wipe down every surface that has been touched by the people that are in attendance. They'll wipe down the chairs. All of that goes through there. We discourage handshaking. It's like we're back to the hey, what's up? That kind of attention. So, but this is all just very simple etiquette as to what happens. We need to have it posted as well as follow those guidelines. Perform routine and enhanced environmental cleaning. Again, on a regular basis, everything needs to be wiped down, and then in some cases it needs to be thoroughly disinfected for that. And so that's that fifth category as to how to do that. You notice that the last bullet point there says follow CDC recommendations on cleaning and disinfecting of community facilities. I chose not to put that slide in there, but that essentially has some of the guidance for the assessments. And so that's where we'll look at each one of our services, determine can we open back up to in-person contact, and then how do we do that safely for that. And so we'll be walking through all of those different assessments this week. We have the expectation that at least one of the first services that will open up is, of course, our billing office, because we still have a majority of our people, the seniors, that want to pay in cash. And so we have no good way in order to have them put it into an envelope and throw it into the box or anything. They really want to make sure that their money makes it to where they're giving it. So we're going to try to set that up. We do have the sneeze guards already in there. They're bulletproof and everything. So we'll just regulate how many people can go in there. Very similar to what Walmart has done. We'll stripe it out if we have a line no closer than 6 foot apart. We'll let 1 or 2 in at a time so we keep the social distancing in there and protect our employees. And so we're walking through each one of those steps. And I believe that, with the governor's exemption to governmental services, that I believe we can get a few more of these open where we can at least give individuals back some of that freedom that everybody's talking about. I would anticipate that we'll try to open some of the parks back up as well too, which means we'll be putting back out some of the porta potties so that people that are using the rec path and everything, because you can social distance on the rec path pretty easy as well too. So Mayor, City Council, if you have any questions, that's my report for tonight.
All right, any questions for Mr. Nebb? Councilor Orpesa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to make sure that that I understand and the public understands that this presentation is in relation to city services and not private businesses.
Yes, sir. And I go back to that public health order, is that the governmental services are exempt from the public health order. So we just need to, we need to make sure, though, that if we're going to have contact with everybody, that our citizens are protected as well as our employees for governmental services only.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you, Councilor. Anyone else? Go ahead, Councilor Moore.
In regards to the parks and the porta potties, how will you, the cleaning and the disinfecting, how will you be able to unless you keep somebody at the park? How would you be able to monitor?
Certainly.
Yeah.
Well, and, and as we would not put all the porta potties back out because, some of the athletic fields are not open to that service yet because of the congregation of individuals. So we will locate a fewer porta potties for just irregular, that's the wrong term, use, but it's, for occasional use. And what we will do is that we will increase the amount of attention that each one of those porta potties get, so they're clean on a more regular basis for the disinfecting. That's the only way that we can figure out exactly how to get that done, but they'll have to be disinfected on a fairly regular basis. And if we can't do it internally, then that means we're going to have to pay the company to do that, so we'll balance that out somehow.
And in all of our offices, there's enough space to be 6 feet apart for the number of employees that you would have in each, whatever you're opening?
Yeah, some of our essential services, they were all spread out by shift work as well too. Police and fire are a good example. They're all shift work. The utilities, they've actually stretched their calendar from, I think, 6 a.m. all the way out to almost 11 p.m., and so they're running crews a little bit differently in all the utility offices. The offices like City Hall is that, we only want X number of people on each one of the floors in City Hall at a given time. There's times when they get a little bit thicker than we like, and then we just make the adjustments to that. So yes, we have, I think we have plenty of room for that. The code enforcement's a good one, that they have a very tight space that they live in for their offices, but most of them are out there doing field work, so we're kind of managing that by who's out in the field and at what time.
Okay. Is there, I had kind of a question between, like he was saying about private, is the way this is going to go out, is the city going to understand that this is just government and not for all the emails and stuff that we got about private sector? Is there a window that we're going to start looking at that at all, or this just for city? Just for governmental offices, and we're not looking at the rest right now. Is that correct?
I would say that the city council is considering those things. The resolution of support for reopening business is on your agenda tonight. As far as city staff is, all we're going to do, unless there's direction by the city council, is we're focusing our attention on how to do the city services safely. Now, there are a lot of similarities within this whole process that match across on all of that. But our concern as staff is trying to make sure that our citizens receive good quality service even through this thing. And they can stay with exactly how we're doing it right now, phone call, email, that'll all stay. But if those individuals that really want to drop off their cash in hand or set up their service, whatever that conversation is, we've been doing by appointment already. We'll just increase that to say, all right, if you stop by and there's nobody else in, then we'll let you in, is essentially what will happen.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Counselor. Anyone else? All right, Mr. Knapp, thank you. I know we've talked about this a great deal, and especially the billing office and getting that open for those folks who do. I don't think people realize how many people come in to pay cash, and so I appreciate the hard work you and staff have done on trying to get us back to normal.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, next up, item number 3, Counselor Foster.
Mayor, I'd like to make a recommendation to council for us to consider approval of Resolution 2027, the COVID-19 Recovery Plan.
I have a motion by Counselor Foster and a second by Counselor Kennard to approve Resolution 20-27. All right, this one's a really bizarre arrangement because we don't normally do it this way. Councilors, you have in your packet Resolution 2027, drafted by yours truly, dealing with the situation in southeast New Mexico and Chavez County. I would point out the 5th paragraph where it talks about the COVID rate. I had considered the idea of suggesting updating it to today's numbers. I am not going to do that because I think we're going to have some other discussions. In any case, the numbers, if they were here today, would be for The cases in the southeast counties would be 2.2% of all cases, and in Chaves County, it's 0.8% of all cases. The case count for Chaves County is at 22, and it has not changed. You may wonder, how do I know this? And if I could have the slides up. Yours truly has been building a spreadsheet for over 5 weeks. I apologize, this is not legible to you. In your inbox was a document I created, and this is one of the attachments to that document. The yellow lines are the weekends, Saturdays, and Sundays. This goes from the far left, which is national numbers. In the middle are New Mexico numbers, and on the right are Chaves County numbers, to try to put everything in perspective. You have heard the term doubling time. The doubling time for Chaves County is in excess of 12 days, as stated in the resolution, and that is being very conservative in the numbers. Doubling time, by the way, is not a simple math of just counting back days. The Secretary for Homeland Security made a comment about that at a press conference recently. It involves taking the number of days from the first case to the current date divided by the binary logarithm of the ratio between the current number of cases and the original number of cases. I'll be happy to share the math with anyone who's interested afterwards. If you can go ahead and go to the other slide. This is actually 2 slides since the 9th of April. I have been updating the numbers of cases in each county, comparing that to the percentage of overall cases and the percentage of cases to percentage of population. On 3 different occasions, I've compared testing numbers, which started appearing on the DOH website. Some individuals may be concerned that our testing is low in southeast New Mexico, and as a result, that's why we don't have the high numbers. That is a legitimate concern for 4 of the counties. However, Chaves County is running a consistent ratio of overall tests of about 0.8. A perfect ratio would be 1, where it's a ratio of number of tests to percentage of population. We are at 7.3. We've been as high as 0.85, 0.73. We are also at 1.5% of the total state population. The nation is shooting to have 2% testing as the threshold for opening. I offer this all to you. You might go to the second one. You won't tell any difference. They look identical till you get up close. Because I believe we have a strong, legitimate case to make for changing the Department of Health regulations for this portion of New Mexico. It's not based upon passion, not based upon anything other than scientific data. The numbers are here. We do not have the situation that McKinley County has, Sandoval County, San Juan County, Bernalillo County. We simply do not have this, and we never have from day one. I am hopeful that this information, when shared with the powers to be in Santa Fe, will establish a legitimate, scientifically based, medically based rationale to relax the stranglehold that is existing on our community. And I present that to you for your consideration. If there's any questions or comments, I stand available to respond. Anyway, Councilor Orpesa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I understand the resolution, but I wonder why we're even here. Because from my understanding is you have already signed a petition with 19 other mayors that basically says the same thing that we're saying here.
That is correct. Actually, I've signed 2 petitions.
Well, I'm aware of one.
Okay. I am not the governing body. And we
Okay.
all know that I don't have a vote unless there's a tie. I speak as a mayor, but this is a governing body. This is the 10 of you.
No, I understand that.
And that's
I'm
the
part
reason.
of it.
That's the reason for the resolution, for you folks to consider one way or the other.
So my question is, as far as economy is concerned, how many small businesses in Roswell have been shut down? Do we know?
I don't know if we have an accurate number. I've heard anecdotally of different businesses being closed permanently, but I don't have a final number. I fear we will not know until this is all over.
So at this point in time, we don't really have a number to put up for the community.
Not that I'm aware of.
No, I don't think we've done any of that math, other than when you look at the governor's health order, it has the listing of what is considered essential services. And so we would have to calculate off of that list which businesses do not meet that. So ones downtown that could be, that are on that list, I would say the jewelry stores, the rock shop. I know the consignment shops don't count for that. So that's just naming a few different sample types as to what have been impacted by the essential. But as far as a straight number, I don't believe that we've ever done that exact math. So
if we don't have that information, then we don't know the average number of employees that have, or what the average number of employees is for all the businesses that are shut down.
no, we do not have that.
And so, since we don't have that information, then we don't have the average pay for employees that are paid by these small businesses. Correct?
Correct.
So, what would be the best guess of an average pay for employee of these type of businesses?
The average pay will be probably a little bit harder to come through. I believe we have on average approximately 6,000 businesses within the city limits. As far as how many of them have how many employees, I don't believe, it would be a hard guess. And I believe that number would drag you a couple different ways in this conversation. So I don't have a good answer for you on those employees. The
So-
average wages, you can go everywhere from the minimum wage on up. For the city, the average wage runs right around $18 an hour. But we have some employees out there at $12, so.
So would $12 be a good figure to throw out there, average?
It's so hard to tell because a lot of our small business owners are also, I guess, independent. They don't have a lot of employees on the backside of that either. I'm not sure how the agricultural workers or any of that is. I don't know if I could give you a number, Counselor, as far as what that would be. I'm safer not to.
What I'm driving at is if you take an average of $12 per hour per employee, okay, and that employee works 40 hours a week, that employee would be making $480 a week. And if you multiply that by 4.3 to get an average monthly, that employee would roughly get $2,064. So if that employee, if the business is shut down, that employee goes and applies for unemployment. That same employee will get regular unemployment, which would be an average around $150 to $200 a week. And because of the relief package passed by Congress last month, they are almost guaranteed $600 additional dollars per week. So if you add the regular unemployment amount plus the $600, you get $750 a week. And you multiply that by 4.3, you're talking about $3,225 per employee. So my point is that when you look at these numbers, in reality, it helps our economy because employees have more money in their pocket to spend. They actually would have $1,161. And so the next question is, what about the business owners? Well, the small business owners are also protected by the packages that were passed by Congress. And they also can receive unemployment if they so choose to, if they close their business. And so from that standpoint, I don't see the need for this resolution to try and open those businesses. The other one that I want to address is the groups vulnerable to this virus. And that is, well, before I go into that one, let me talk about, we can't talk about economy without talking about the school system. We don't seem to talk about our school system. I think they go hand in hand because school is out. And so you open up the businesses, people go back to work, then you have babysitting problems and all some other problems that come along with it. But the other problem is vulnerability. And based on the statistics that I have seen, this virus seems to impact seniors and minorities and lower economic social groups, which can be economically health problems, diabetes, high cholesterol, obesity, high blood pressure, and what have you. And according to the census information that I was able to look up, Roswell's 65 and older population is at 15.6%. And when you add all the groups of minorities together, they make up 64.9% of the population in Roswell. And so if you combine those two groups, you have an 80.5% of the Roswell population that will fall in the vulnerable category. And that at 80% is a very high number. And yes, we are low as far as cases are concerned. But in my estimation, I think we should be glad that we're not dealing with numbers like McKinley or Bernalillo and some other ones. And maybe we are doing the right thing because our numbers are showing it. And we know it as well as anybody else that once one individual gets exposed, that individual is going to expose like 10 or 12 or whatever number they're using. And then you have an explosion. And so I don't think that we as a council can guarantee the public that because we have relatively low numbers in comparison to the rest of the state, that they will not run the risk of getting the virus. I don't think we can guarantee that. And if we can, I guess the individuals that have passed away, we can ask their relatives. Because every single person that has passed away is not a statistic. They are someone's child, brother, sister, dad, mom, whatever. You know, and I am not willing to support a resolution to encourage the governor to open up the small businesses. Mainly because if by some luck we would be able to change our mind, I think we're playing with people's lives. And I think that if we can save one life here, it's well worth it. And so I am not willing to be part of the group that asked the governor to open up the businesses. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Counselor. I have Counselor Roebuck, Perry, Moore, and Kennard wishing to speak. That is my list at this time. Counselor Roebuck, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to start out with, this is obviously a difficult time that we're definitely in between a rock and a hard place. You know, I'll let other colleagues address or paste those comments if they will. I would like to make a motion to amend the resolution with a replacement resolution. I will read it as presented. Whereas the state of New Mexico has been battling the COVID-19 pandemic since March 13, and the city of Roswell is experiencing a corresponding economic crisis, and where industries including dairy and agriculture, oil, retail, medical, tourism, and aviation are all being severely impacted. Whereas the citizens of Roswell need jobs to support the health and welfare of their families. Whereas the city of Roswell is anticipating a loss in gross receipts tax collection to be an estimated between 20 and 30% for the next fiscal year, and whereas the city's ability to provide necessary and critical services will be materially impacted. Now therefore be it resolved that the City Council, as the governing body of the City of Roswell, New Mexico, hereby deems all businesses within the city to be essential to the well-being of our citizens. And may it further be resolved that businesses within the City of Roswell follow National Center for Disease Control guidelines.
All right, I have a motion by Counselor Roebuck to present a substitute resolution 20-27 as just read. I believe each of you have a copy of it in your packet. I have a second by Counselor Best. We are now on a motion to substitute a different version of resolution 20-27. Counselor Roebuck, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This has been a difficult time for everybody, like I said, and certainly when I ran for city council, I wasn't expecting to deal with this kind of crisis. I don't think anybody saw this on the horizon. It is definitely, we have an issue where we are dealing with not just one evil, but two evils. We've got the issue of the coronavirus itself, and we have the issue of the economy. Economy is an interesting thing. A lot of people say that it's about money and dollars, but money and dollars represent people's hard work. They represent people's commitment to a business or to an idea, and ultimately they represent the way that we care for our families, the way that our community grows, the way we invest in each other. It's a tool, and a mechanism that we use. I think our citizens need the elected officials to stand up for them, to be their voice in this time, to say, hey, that the cure that has been prescribed for this, as far as society, is causing equally, if not more, damaging harm to our economy, which will not just have ramifications for the next month, but could have ramifications for the next year or decade, depending on how bad the economy gets. I've spoken to countless business owners, some who have some open and some who don't, and they all express the same thing. They take the disease very seriously, but they also don't want to lose their businesses. And they believe that they go to Walmart, they go to Home Depot, they say, gosh, we can do the same thing at our businesses, and why are we not allowed to do that? And for those of people who've never been a business owner, I equate it like this. If you went to somebody who had a degree and you said, I'm going to take away your engineering degree and you got to start over again. Well, if someone's small business gets destroyed because of a extreme, unanticipated economic downturn, that's effectively what you're doing. You're taking away their livelihood. You're taking away their ability to provide for their families. You're taking away their ability to provide jobs for this community. I think that our community has been very patient. I think for the most part we've been very considerate. And I think that at this point, based on, obviously we've got more information than we had 2 weeks ago, more information we had a month ago, and I think the mayor did a great job of putting that together and showing that that the risk here is very low. And I think something that we realize is that the city council never guarantees anybody that something bad's not going to happen to them. If we wanted to do that, we would stop people from driving in cars. We wouldn't sell another drop of alcohol. There was a lot of things we would do if our goal was to make sure that everybody is guaranteed complete safety. But that's just not the reality of the world. We can't do that. And so as a society, we come together and we assess what risk we are willing to take. And as elected officials, I believe it's our job to help that assessment, especially in times like this. The resolution, I think, as the alternate has presented, the point is that we want to give our business owners know that the city is behind them and give them the support that they need. The sheriff is currently on a case-by-case basis looking at things and saying, are you essential, and giving people one-offs that say that this business, I declare this business as essential. I believe that we can do the same thing on a more blanket basis. And the when you talk about the kind of impact that we're having, I've talked with law enforcement and I've talked with people in the Child Protection Services, CASA, and you talk about there are certain people that are getting sick, and for certain people there is definitely people, COVID is a real thing, but also child abuse is a real thing. And we're seeing a spike of child abuse, and we're seeing a spike of domestic abuse, domestic violence. And the reason what happens is when you put pressure on people, people make bad decisions. And we need to take that pressure off, and we need to give people hope. And I believe that based on the information that we have from the CDC, based on what we've seen current businesses in town doing, that you can operate within a reasonable margin of safety. And I think that for the health of our community long term, not just in the next weeks and months and year, but for the health of our community 2 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road, we have to realize that economic downturns have long-term impacts. I mean, think about when we lost the air base. That was, decades, and decades later we still struggle with that impact. So those are some of my thoughts I wanted to share as I introduce this, and I will yield the floor. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor. I have Councilor Perry who wanted to speak remotely. Councilor Perry, are you there?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me fine?
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to speak to some of the concerns that my colleague, Councilor Orpesa, has brought up, and just bring some thoughts from another perspective there. The question was asked, what is the number of those that are closed? What is the number of businesses closed? What is the number of those that are closed? Well, the simple answer to that is all of them that the governor has decreed or mandated are non-essential. I understand the unemployment and the payments that the federal government is willing to make at this time, and I'm not here to go through that, but I do know people right here in Roswell right now who are currently not working that are refusing to take an unemployment check because they recognize that unemployment was originally given to us from another sense of a way, and they just don't want to take money just to be taking money, so they're living off of their means and what they've saved. I know people that are doing that right now. My question would be more of the longer that our economy is shut down, we're going to see the effect of that, not now. Yes, people are able, and I'm grateful that our nation has the ability right now to do this in a means of debt that we're adding to the national debt. But we all know and recognize that the day is going to come when Washington is going to deal with this with a tax increase, or is going to deal with this in other means that is going to be an even greater burden to myself, to my children, to your children, to our grandchildren in the future. We are just adding to that. Concerning the business owners, yes, there are the things out there, and I've read and I've looked at them. I've spoke to many business owners. I've had, and by the way, many, I don't know about the other counselors, but I've received numerous emails and telephone calls today asking us to support something to get them back to work. I asked some of them, I said, are you familiar with the stimulus for small business? Are you familiar with the PPP and all these other things? Yes, sir, we are familiar with those things. We understand that. We recognize that. We need to be open. And this is from business owners. This is from employees of business owners. They still have insurance. They still have building utilities. They still have building rent. We have one business on Main Street. I spoke to the owner just the other day. A staple to downtown Roswell that is going to cease to exist in their current location. The building owner is not willing to wait and for different things, and in the end, they're being forced to have to move, and hopefully they'll be able to find something. If not, that may be a business that we lose permanently here in Roswell. When I was hearing the statistics about the 15% from those over a certain age and the minority percentage of the 65%, I just want to caution us that you can't add those two numbers together and come with an 80%. To do that, we would have to say that there are no elderly or minorities, or there are no minorities over the age of 60 or whatever that number is. We recognize there are, so we can't add those numbers together to get a true population of what was presented. What makes us different from anywhere else? I've seen some things online that have said, because of all these regulations, because of these deeming of essentials and non-essentials, is what has kept New Mexico from being another New York. Well, the fact is, the thing that has really saved New Mexico, and let's just go ahead and say significantly, southeastern New Mexico specifically, is the fact that the state of New Mexico has 2.097 people in it, population of 2 million people. The population of just New York City, not the whole state, just New York City, is almost 19 million. That's a drastic contrast. The fact that we are rural, the fact that our people are not stacked on top of each other in skyscrapers and they don't call them the tubes in New York, the subway, because of the closeness and the things. We don't have that in New Mexico, specifically southeast New Mexico. Yet, here are the folks in southeast New Mexico are in significant trouble because of these. I want to talk about this for just a moment from another perspective. And I'm not saying anything except for I see a little of it myself because my wife is in the healthcare profession. I have received some phone calls from people who are significantly negatively affected because of this. I spoke with a man just this last week who has a brain tumor, a growing brain tumor on his brain. He was supposed to have it removed 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, they postponed it because they could not get permission to have the surgery to the next week. The next week, they have postponed it indefinitely. This man, who will die of a brain tumor if it is not removed soon, cannot receive treatment because we might need that bed in the hospital. We might need that ventilator that he'll have to be on for the surgery. They might need some of the PPE, the personal protection equipment, because they might need at a later date those things. So we have people in southeast New Mexico, in Roswell specifically, that could die because of this mandate. I think we have to think about that. I think we have to consider that. I already preached the funeral of a young 35 or 37-year-old man that I just performed his marriage in January. And this young man was a great guy. I performed his wedding in December, and I performed his funeral in April because he could not get all the proper testing that he needed because there was such an extended and significant strain and push about the possibility here in Roswell. Now listen, I'm grateful that we have healthcare providers. We have healthcare providers that have come in, Dr. Joel and the other doctor, that have given us great information. I'm going to tell you, I take it serious. When I go out, I wear that protective mask. When I go out, I use my stuff, and I stay home as absolutely much as possible. I keep my children at home. We're running the streets, running everywhere. I do that because I believe that is what's best. At the same time, we have to recognize we have people that are not able to get the medical attention that they need because of this crisis and the mandates that we have. For that reason, and also the reason that this community is speaking with us, I see the necessity of moving forward with a resolution in favor of business. I don't believe that local business needs to act out inappropriately. I believe, as a matter of fact, I would like to make a motion to make an amendment to this resolution, or Mr. Mayor, do you want me to wait on that?
No,
preferably
go ahead.
until this is over.
Why don't you go ahead and make your motion to amend
Okay.
at this time?
So a couple of things in the resolution that Councilor Roebuck has brought forward, just a few things that I think that we need to consider. Number one, I'm going to mention what these are and explain them, Mr. Mayor, and then I will make the motion to make those changes.
All right.
The first would be to remove the fourth whereas the city of Roswell is anticipating a loss in gross receipt tax collection to be estimated between 20% and 30% for the next fiscal year. Now, it's not that I disagree with that. I just want to keep the focus, and I'm not saying by any means that Councilor Roebuck had any other thoughts. I'm just saying I want to keep the focus on our businesses, on our employees, and on our community, not on what the government's going to lose. That's something that I would just soon leave out of this agenda, this resolution. The second portion would be in the fifth whereas, which would become the fourth whereas, taking out the word materially and replace it with the word tremendously. Whereas the city's ability to provide necessary and critical services will be tremendously impacted there. In the now, therefore, be it resolved that the City Council, as the governing body of the City of Roswell, New Mexico, hereby, and let me explain this after I say it, I would like to replace the word deems for the word recognizes or believes. I'll use the word believes. That's closer to the word deems. All businesses within the city to be crucial instead of essential to the well-being of our citizens. Let me explain that portion there. I want our citizens to understand, as passionate as I am, I don't want to speak on behalf of the other counselors, but as I read this, as passionate as it looks like Councilor Roebuck is, as passionate as it seems evident by what our mayor has presented, I believe I don't want to speak for everyone, but I will say, at least on those, I see passionate people who want our businesses to be able to thrive. At the same time, I want us to be very careful. And I had a conversation with two people on the phone today who said to me, Councilor Perry, vote on the resolution to open up business in Roswell. And I spoke to them and I said, I wish that Roswell had the ability to open every business. The fact of the matter is we can strengthen a mandate, we can strengthen a statute, we can add more restrictions, if you would say, on things like that. If we deem something needs to be stronger or strengthen language for something that's come down from the in statute or something like that, we have the ability to make it more restrictive. We do not have the authority per our state constitution and the laws of this state to weaken any statute or mandate. We don't have that authority. I want the language to be clear to the people that we do believe, we do recognize your business to be crucial to the well-being of our citizens, but no one on our council, nor this mayor or city manager, is going to be able to produce anything to anyone that is going to protect them in the end if, God forbid, but if the mandate brought penalty to Roswell, New Mexico. We're all still sort of in a wait to see what happened in where was it, Grants today. But the situation there, we don't know. I've been waiting to see what happens. But I think that we need to be very careful because I spoke with right before, between the 4 o'clock, 5:30, both believed that this was going to give them permission, and we don't have the ability to tell them, we recognize you as essential, and the businesses in that situation. Last but not least, in May, further be resolved that businesses within the city, add the word must, follow National Center for Disease Control guidelines. We know that they must do that. So the business is going to choose to open, then they would need to follow those National Center for Disease Control guidelines, be responsible. So those are the changes I would like to make. So at this time, I will put it in a motion and see what happens. So I'll make a motion to amend the amended resolution as given by Councilor Roebuck to strike the fourth whereas. The fifth whereas would then become the fourth whereas, to replace the word material with the word tremendously. In the now therefore be it resolved, strike the word deems, add the word believes, strike the word essential, add the word crucial in its place, and insert the word must after city in the and may it further be resolved. I yield.
All right, let me repeat this for the record. The motion is to delete the fourth whereas on what is currently the fifth whereas and would become the fourth, replace the word materially with tremendously. In the now therefore be it resolved paragraph, replace the word deems with believes, replace the word essential with crucial, and in the further be resolved paragraph, add the word must between city and follow. Ms. Call, do you have that?
That would be just a minute.
And I have a second by Councilor Kennard. Ladies and gentlemen on council, we are now on a motion to amend the substitute resolution. We can do no further amendments. We must act on this before we can do anything else. So the original list to speak is preserved, but now does anyone wish to speak specifically on the amendments put forward by Councilor Perry? Councilor Moore.
Okay.
Okay.
And the last one where it says deems all,
I'm sorry. Say it one more time.
you know, there now therefore where it says deems all.
These all.
Yeah, the deems, he said.
Oh,
took
deems
deem-
all.
yeah, he took
Believes
out
all.
deem.
Yeah, replace
Yeah,
the word believe.
Believes all, yes.
Believes all.
So my concern is with the word all. Can we alternate that word?
We're
Are we-
unable to do another amendment. We have one amendment, and that's all we can do right
Okay.
now. We cannot go further than that,
Okay.
okay? Anything else, counselors? All right. At this point, we will have a roll call vote. A yes approves these changes to the substitute resolution. A no or nay rejects these changes or amendments to the substitute resolution. This is not final action on the resolution. This is simply on these changes put forth by Councilor Perry. Is there any question on what the action is? All right, Ms. Call, please call the roll.
Counselor Oropesa,
No.
Counselor Stubbs,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
No.
Counselor Kinnard,
Yes.
Counselor Best,
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez, yes. Yes. Counselor Moore, Counselor Roebuck,
No, with explanation.
Counselor Perry,
Yes.
5 to 4, the amendment for this motion passes.
All right, we have an amended substitute resolution. Councilor Roebuck, you wish to explain your vote?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to say I do like almost all those changes. The one thing that I just wanted to point out, and again, this is certainly open to interpretation. I certainly think that Councilor Perry's logic is pretty sound. I think we do have room, though, to interpret, and we interpret state statutes and state orders all the time, and I think there was some room for interpretation in this as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Counselor. All right, we're back now on the debate of what is an amended substitute resolution. The amended substitute resolution. So I will return to the speaking list. Counselor Moore, you took yourself off. Did you?
No, only because I have
Okay.
another question.
All right, then I have, this is the list I have. I have Counselor Kinnard, Best, Foster, and Moore. Counselor Kinnard, you have the floor. Thank you.
I think a lot of the counselors have touched on all of the issues that I think are very serious as a result of the COVID pandemic. Now, how I feel, I've been contacted by businesses and individuals, some that own businesses and some that are just employed, and others that are employed in other areas but have taken severe pay cuts as a result of all of this with the economy. The first issue that I have with what has been deemed essential and non-essential is the equality. Where is the equality when Walmart can sell retail and our small businesses cannot sell their retail items? My second issue is I believe that small businesses following the CDC guidelines can control as well or better the cleanliness and disinfecting and social distancing requirements that Walmart, Home Depot, and I hate to use those, but everybody goes there, you know, I see everybody there shopping. To address Councilor Oropesa, I've heard of several businesses closing. I received a letter from my gym, the Roswell Racquet Club. One of the gyms that I have a membership to is closed. And, you know, I don't know how many people they employ. I want to guess 6 to 10 possibly. But that's been here for God knows how long. And, you know, that's pretty sad that that business is gone now. I do want to touch on the disparity of cases in other areas around the state compared to what we're dealing with here. I think that that must be considered. And I do want to say that I don't think that that any one of us is taking this lightly. I have a grandmother that's 80 years old, and I would hate for anything to happen to her as a result of this. However, those people can remain to stay at their homes. You know, in my grandmother's case, she has a fixed income that she lives on, but that is not the case for everybody else, and that includes my family. I know that Councilor Roebuck touched on the mental health issue, the family issues with domestic violence, and, you know, all the other things that go along with economic pressures. I did want to touch on the fact that a few of us were able to tour, and I know that Karen Sanders is setting up tours for other counselors and other leaders in the community. One of the things that I learned over the weekend in visiting Eastern New Mexico Medical Center is another thing that Jason Perry had touched on, is that preventative care is not happening. Screenings aren't happening. It's pretty eerie to walk into a hospital and nobody's there. The parking lot's empty. There's no one there. And it's, that's pretty much all I have to say. I know that a lot of people have covered some of those same things, but I am going to support this resolution.
Thank you, Counselor. My list is now Counselor Best, Foster, and Moore. Counselor Best, you have the floor.
Hey, I'm going to go in a little bit of different direction here, and Jason took out the word essential. Let's put it back in for a moment, because that seems to be what's being used from the federal government all the way down to us minuscule people at the end of the road. And I did write a speech because I have a tendency to ramble. So, this resolution that was written by Jacob Roebuck with the help of Margaret Kennard, Judy Stubbs, and others in the council is simply worded so our constituents can understand what is sent to the governor of New Mexico. To me, the best part of it is the city of Roswell, New Mexico, hereby deems all businesses within the city to be essential to the well-being of our citizens. Definition of essential. Noun, a thing that is absolutely necessary. Adjective, absolutely necessary, extremely important. All of these definitions describe all people of all races over the whole United States and other countries. We are essential to life to help each other survive the circle of life. One person is not better than another. One business is not better than another. This is common sense of action and reaction. Common sense of knowing your people and how they live to survive. I, myself, as a counselor, send my heart out to everyone at this time. I do know what it's like to live from paycheck to paycheck. Also a business owner. Also a single mother raising children. By passing such a simply worded resolution, I hope that the governor of New Mexico can understand what southeastern New Mexico heart stands, where southeastern New Mexico heart stands, with its people, all of its people. We have common sense. We have no problem following the CDC guidelines for opening our businesses, but every human life is essential, from conception to internment. We are essential. It is the cycle of life helping each other to survive. I pray that everyone does what they feel is right for themselves, their family, their businesses. Common sense is the main key. We are all in this together and will come out in the end better, essential human beings. I will support this resolution as it is amended.
Thank you. I now have Counselor Foster and Counselor Moore. That exhausts my list. Counselor Foster, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. And I know we've all touched on it. We've all gotten lots and lots of calls and emails. But today I talked to a business owner that had experienced $20,000 worth of orders canceled on orders that he had actually already ordered product and now has the product and has the canceled orders. He today emptied his checking account to pay his GRT for last month. And so he's sitting at zero. He's also very aware of all the support that the government's handing down supposedly to our businesses. He tried from the start and he talked to our state, and they said, well, we don't have the capability to have you file yet, and for 2 weeks, and now it just opened up on Sunday for them to file. I've talked to numerous unemployed who have tried to apply for unemployment that haven't gotten their unemployment, that haven't got signed up for it. But all said and good, once that actually starts coming, that will be great. But I liken this, our quarantine or this effect to oxygen. All of us, or most of us, have had people or friends and relatives in the hospital who've been on oxygen. We all need oxygen to survive. In the hospital, they pump 100% oxygen to you through tubes. And when you start feeling better, you start turning that oxygen down and eventually get you totally off the oxygen. If you keep that oxygen going, you start damaging the lungs, and eventually you will kill the person that you're trying to help. And that's exactly what these mandates of ours are doing. Initially, I think it was a great thing. We slowed the curve, we slowed the spread until we started getting information and we knew what we were dealing with. Now we know what we're dealing with. We can start turning that oxygen back. Problem is, the longer we have this oxygen on full, we're killing our businesses. Great, we have unemployment for our people, but guess what? If they don't have a business to go back to a job to go back to after it's all over, what does it matter? We are going to face a whole different world when we finally get this mandates gone and when we finally have some idea of what COVID-19 is going to be living with. We all have choices too. We're not telling businesses you have to open. We're not telling you if you are your health is compromised to go out to these businesses. We're just saying we need the option to get our businesses and throw a lifeline to our businesses. We're also not saying that there won't be other consequences. We cannot, like Councilor Perry said, we cannot lessen a mandate from the governor. But we can say we are behind you and we support you, and we'll do it in many other ways and can fight what our state government's doing. And we've got to start slowly turning this oxygen off, or we're going to have a whole bunch of dead businesses. So I will stand behind this amended resolution.
Thank you, Councilor Foster. I have Councilor Moore and then Councilor Oropesa. Councilor Moore, you have the floor.
I honestly came in here when I had read it, and I was thinking both sides. I had my mind, I was like trying to come open-minded. And I began to think about, someone was saying about an antibiotic, and I, because I was sick for a while. I stopped my antibiotic, I felt better after day 3, so I stopped taking my antibiotic. And what I had a relapse, okay? Your stuff has happened for a reason. So, and this would affect me because I won't be able to go outside as much because I have a compromised immune system. So I understand, and because I'm a business major, I do understand the small business side of it also. And I'm thinking about this resolution in a couple of ways because I feel like my kind of thing is all, that kind of, I don't know, in my English brain, this never say all or no, in the one way or the other. And so I'm struggling because I understand the heart of the people. I understand the need for the city. I understand, for the small businesses. And I'm like her about equality. I felt the same way. Walmart, the big man, he's going to be all right anyway. He got backers. They have backers. They have resources. So I was feeling some type of way about Walmart and Home Depot, and what the man downtown, she can sell some clothes just like Walmart. So I've been battling back and forth and trying to make a decision on how I was going to vote on this. And so it kind of comes down to some people are saying by doing this, all our letters I got, most of them were against it. Were for this. And so I began to think about listening to everybody's ways. I try to always be fair and weigh all the people that are, writing or emailing and think about, what's best for the city and what's best for, your constituents and things. And you got to think about yourself. Like I said, I just won't have to go outside. I'm just me. But I feel like I just don't want it to look like to our people that we're not taking into account because those small business need to open, that we're taking the lives from the lives of people, putting them at risk. The people now are not filing the mandates about the 6 feet. I telling people all the time, 6 feet, back up, all the time, because people are not listening. Other people don't usually care about the people around them. You see a lot of them, no one's walking around with masks, they wear a mask. So what kind of mandates, if we put this, what kind of mandates are we going to give the small businesses? And I understand her, I agree with her. They're easy to wipe down. They're easier, less to be able to keep 5 people in the building and stuff. They have a better ability to do that. But who's going to mandate? Who's going to watch it? Who's going to know that if we open up, then the people from McKinley County are going to come down and go shopping? Or whoever got the most, a large amount. If we open up, then we don't know what's coming in. We don't know the unknown. And that's what really worries me about this, is the unknown. We can, by passing this, are we saying we care more about the money than people? By not passing this, are we saying, is life more important than $1? But I just want everybody to think about, when we do this, we're not doing it just all willy-nilly. This is not, most of us, I know we've thought about this, and I've prayed about it. I have people praying right now because I feel like this is a major decision. It's going to affect a lot of people. But I do have one question. If we say yes to this and it goes, it doesn't mean that the governor is going to say, okay, all right, go do what you do. It doesn't mean that, correct?
Correct.
So just because we send it there doesn't mean that she's going to give it our stamp of approval and, okay, you do whatever you want. So, right?
Not
Am I
going to
correct?
happen.
All right, so it's just saying that we're behind our people. That's where we're going with this, right? We're saying we're behind our small business people around here. And I'm telling you how I cry riding up and down Main Street with no cars and the door after door after door with the sign. And I understand, like I said, we understand what it was all about, and it's kind of like, and if we open, I don't think it should be all wide open all at once. That's kind of my concern. I don't know if I want it because I don't want everything at once. I just kind of feel like if we can ease into it, then some other people may be more comfortable with it than to say open up everything. That's kind of like pulling a scab off a sore that's not healed. It's going to pull that scab off too soon and it's going to bleed again. So I just think as we continue to go this, I'm still weighing my options about voting on this, but I don't want to think just because you say no to that, I'm saying no to the small business, no to the people of Roswell. I just think that we need to kind of, think about this a little bit, and I don't know if what's the difference in waiting a couple of more weeks for the May 13th, I think, or whatever the governor's next date is extended to?
The 15th.
15th. So, so I don't know. So I'm kind of weighing my options right now, but I just don't want the city to, the people to think that we don't care or I don't care, because I do. And I don't just care about me. Like I said, I'll stay at home. I'm one of the ones that would be infected, so I would stay at home, but we all have that option, so I kind of agree with that. So I'm just kind of not sure right now about my support of this right now.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. We now have additional individuals. We have Counselor Oropesa. Counselor Perry has indicated he wishes to speak for 30 seconds. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Counselor Stubbs and then Counselor Roebuck. Counselor Oropesa, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to address a couple of things that were said. And yes, I agree with Counselor Perry. 80% is just a very generalistic number, because I didn't have the time to really extrapolate all the information out of the information that I had. So it is a very simplistic, and even if you take out the 15%, which we know that there's some elderly minorities, even if you take out the 15%, that still leaves you at 64.9%. And that number is still high. And the fact, I believe Councilor Roebuck mentioned about the sheriff, something to the effect of he would be able to declare an essential business, if I heard you correctly. I don't believe that the sheriff has that authority either. So, if indeed he has, he should have done it back in March the 13th or 19th, whatever that date was. But if he's telling people that he has that ability to do, I personally don't think he does. And so based on my personal thinking, I think he's giving false hope to the businesses that go and see him to open up a business and then get cited by the state police, because the state police really is the one that's going to police that, whether you're an essential business or not, based on what the governor's orders are. And so, and all I hear is the side of the business. And believe me, I understand our businesses are very important, but we cannot forget the common person that is so afraid of getting the contact with the virus. I've seen a lot of the emails that are coming in from the business sites, but I've also received a lot of telephone calls from people that are worried about getting the virus and their families. And I guess until it hits us directly with one of our family members, then that may open up our eyes. I don't know. But that's not a position that I'm willing to take, to put my kids or my grandkids or anybody else for that matter at risk. Because the governor has said she will extend it to May the 15th, and at that point, she may come back and open up the businesses and declare essential. Who knows what's going to happen on May the 15th? So, again, I want to speak for the common person that is scared that they may lose a relative. And it seems like this conversation that we've had is all surrounded around the business. And I understand where the business is a very important part of the community. And so, for that reason, I am not supporting like I said, the resolution. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Perry, are you there?
I am, Mr. Mayor, and I am going to retract my 30-second statement, but I will be brief, I promise you. I do thank Councilor Oropesa for his concerns, and I won't in any way, and I meant no disrespect at all to anything that I shared concerning my view and the other side of that. Let me just say to one part of that, I am one of those common persons. I do not own a business. I am a pastor of a church. Of course, we have regulations that we're under as well, or mandates, but I am one of those regular people. But I didn't receive any phone calls, and I do not discredit the phone calls that went to Councilor Oropesa. I didn't receive any phone calls from anyone that asked not to support this. Let me just say this. I'm home tonight because I believe in responsibility. I planned to be there. I drove there to be with y'all tonight. I wasn't feeling well, and short story, I felt the need to come home, and I'm running a fever right now. I did not want to jeopardize anyone. Now, I'm a beekeeper, and I was stung by some bees yesterday, caring for my bees, and I think that's most likely what it's from, but I don't want to take that risk. I am a common person, but I'm a common person that is being affected from this shutdown by me not being able to get the things, many of the things that I, for my family, deem necessary. Let me just say this, Councilor Moore, you and I are just now starting to get to know each other, and I'll just tell you this, from what I see so far, you're bringing heart to this council. You're bringing that human side, that heart side, and I appreciate your thoughts on praying about this decision, because that's what each of us should be doing. We should prayerfully be considering this. You had mentioned what the unknown makes us fearful, and I agree with 100%. That's why I have been praying about this as well. One thing I know for sure is every day that goes by staying like this, Roswell will be that much more never the same again. I do agree with what the mayor said. This is a resolution, that it's a statement. That's what it is. We cannot debunk or defunct a mandate. We can't override a mandate, but we can tell our citizens that we support you at this time. And I guess the last thing that I will say is to each of our counselors is we were all elected to be representatives of the people. And that's where I take my vote to right now. I see the people hurting. I've seen it affect people. I've seen the eyes of the widow crying at a funeral because her husband could not get the necessary treatment because of this. I see the effect it has on people who can't have surgery that's life-threatening right now because of the what-ifs. I see what it's doing to families and businesses that are having to make drastic decisions that not only affects that business owner, but their employees, those employees' children, those children and their lives. This trickles all the way down. And there's just not an easy answer to this. I have no qualms or anything ill or unkind to say about our governor. I would hate to be in this position having to make these decisions. I'm sure she has many sleepless nights trying to make determinations. However, through my prayer and consideration, I must represent the people here in Roswell, and that's why I support the resolution. I yield.
Thank you. That's the longest 30 seconds I've ever experienced. I have Councilor Stubbs, Roebuck, and Sanchez. Councilor Stubbs, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I keep rereading this resolution, that's the substitute with amendments that we have on the floor, and I don't see that it really says much of anything that we've been addressing. If I can just recap, it says that the state's battling the COVID-19, that industries are severely impacted, and citizens need jobs, and the city's ability to provide services is tremendously impacted. And then what we're resolving is that we believe all businesses within the city are critical, and that businesses within the city must follow national CDC guidelines. So, yes, they're critical, and yes, they should all be following CDC guidelines no matter what. So I'm not sure what this resolves. So, that's just a point I'd like to make. I would like to say a few things, and I feel almost stupid asking this question because, again, I don't think there's a resolve here that is different than anything we're doing right now, but I would like to ask our attorney or our city manager or whoever wants to answer it. Is there a liability here? I mean, if we are basically defying a state order, which again, I don't think this really is, but I think the discussion has led that way. Is there a liability to us, and is there a liability possibly, well, to the businesses that go ahead and open as well?
Good evening, councilors. First of all, let me just say that, to be clear, a resolution is not a law at all, right? It's not even an ordinance. It's only a statement of the intention or of the beliefs of the council as a body. And so to the extent that what you're saying is this is what we believe and that this is what we recommend should happen, that's appropriate for the resolution, I believe. Is it possible for somebody to misconstrue that as a legal, carte blanche to do what they want? I mean, we can't predict what people are going to do, and we also can't predict what clever plaintiffs' attorneys are going to come up with to sue the city. Where that goes, the city manager has bought a crystal ball. I don't think he's distributed them to all the departments yet. I'm waiting on mine, and as soon as I get mine, I'll answer that question.
Appropriate answer, I guess.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you. Thank you. So I don't know where I am with this, but I like everybody up here. I know we've talked to friends and families and professionals and to our God, and it's still a very, very difficult question to try and answer. I do want to thank all the people that have contacted me by email, by phone, on the street, what it may be, because I personally gain every time someone talks to me and gives me information, and I so appreciate that. Continues to make this a very difficult decision. I, just kind of as a side note, as Counselor Kennard mentioned, a few of us toured Eastern Medical Center this weekend, and I'm so appreciative of the fact that we did get to do that, and I am totally convinced that there's enough beds if the virus were to get worse here in Chaves County. And I did today send a message to the governor's office, just as a personal message from Judy Stubbs, that well, I don't know what the word, I don't even remember what the words I used, and I can't read my writing. But the non-critical and the test kind of surgeries, procedures that are being delayed, as we've heard, it's my opinion that those should continue to go on. I worry about mammograms and colonoscopies and those kinds of things. So just to know, I sent that message. I think above all else, I'm concerned that we aren't addressing a very thoughtful, prudent, cautious kind of process here. We're just stating something, and stating something with what kind of process. I'm a big person on process, and I don't see process here. And I think more than anything, for me personally, is I don't know that everything I've read, everything I've watched on television, on Facebook and everything else, really gives me enough knowledge to override or deny a state public health order. And that's probably the main reason I'm not going to vote in favor of this, is that I feel there are much more people out there. There are many more people out there that are much more versed and intelligent in the effects of this. So I don't feel like I have that information. I do want to thank Counselor Moore for the things she said, because I agree 100% with the passion that she has. And like I say, you said it probably better than I, but for the reasons I've just stated, I'm going to vote no. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Counselor. I have Counselor Roebuck and Counselor Sanchez. Counselor Roebuck, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of brief comments. One, to address something that Counselor Stubbs said. And none of us are experts on disease up here, but politicians aren't hired to be experts. We're hired to take the advice from experts, take the advice from economists, take the advice of our constituents, and synthesize it into a decision. And that's just what we do. That's our job. They don't expect, I don't think our constituents expect us to be experts on disease control. They expect us to take the information and make decisions based on all the factors beyond just one field of expertise. I do want to address a couple of things that Councilor Moore said, who I always appreciate her input, but I too I have people praying for us right now, and I appreciate that. One thing I do think about this, Councilor Moore, that you said is, I think this is helping us ease into it by starting to think about it now, and I do view it in that way. as we need to think about. The most important thing, and this will be my last comment, is our people need hope. They need hope, and this, more than anything, is to help give our businesses hope that they know somebody is fighting for them in very, very drastic times. And that is the most important thing, even with the changes that we've approved on this that I'm not particularly thrilled about, but the most important thing is that we pass this just so that people know that their elected officials are standing behind them. Thank you.
Councilor Sanchez, I understand you shared your comments with Ms. Call. Would you like her to relay them?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Sanchez has asked for me to speak on his behalf, saying that he agrees with this resolution, and he believes the economy should be opened, but to follow the guidelines with the national CDC. Yes.
All right. Okay. Councilors, we're close to being at the point to take a vote on this, but I think it would be appropriate if we took about a 3-minute recess. And I have 7:17 right now. Let's take a 3-minute recess and reconvene at 7:20. We are in recess. Thank you for that break, councilors. It was 7:21. We're back in session. Councilors, we have two potential actions before us. I'm going to ask for a vote on adopting the substitute resolution as amended as the actionable item. Let me explain that again. This will be a vote on making, whether or not we make the substitute resolution as amended the actionable item. A yes or aye does, a no or nay does not. Now, if it failed, we'd go back to the original resolution that we were presented with. If it passes, we would then vote on whether or not we approve the overall. Couple points. The action to adopt or to make the substitute resolution as amended the item to be acted upon is a simple majority of those present and voting. However, to adopt a resolution requires minimum of 6 affirmative votes. That is a majority of the governing body. So, first up is the question whether or not to adopt as Resolution 20-27 the proposed substitute resolution as amended. This is not the final action. This is just to make it the next action. In other words, think of it as an additional amendment. A yes or aye makes the substitute resolution as amended the item to be acted upon for final approval or disapproval. That's a yes vote. A no vote rejects it. Is there any questions, or is it all clear as mud? Okay. Ms. Call, you're going to call the roll.
Counselor Orpesa?
No.
Counselor Stubbs?
Yes.
Counselor Foster?
Yes.
Counselor Kennard?
Yes.
Counselor Best?
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez?
Yes.
Let me just confirm that is a yes. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Counselor Moore? I'm sorry, could you repeat that? Counselor Roebuck? Yes. Counselor Perry?
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have one more vote, because I'm assuming there's no more debate. This is a final action to adopt this resolution as the substitute resolution as amended as a resolution of the governing body of the city of Roswell. A yes or aye approves the resolution, the substitute resolution as presented with amendment. A no or nay rejects it. Again, for a resolution to take effect, it requires 6 affirmative votes. Ms. Call, please call the roll.
Counselor Orpesa?
No.
Counselor Stubbs?
No.
Counselor Foster?
Yes.
Counselor Kennard?
Yes.
Counselor Best?
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez?
Yes.
Counselor Moore? No. Counselor Roebuck?
Yes.
Counselor Perry?
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, next item up, we have the city manager announcements. Mr. Nebb, welcome back.
Thank you. Mayor, City Council, thank you for all the work tonight. I have no other messages for you tonight, a lot of great work. I do want to thank or welcome back Councilor Sanchez to our group. It's so good to see you out and about, sir. Other than that, have a good night.
All right, I have 7:26 as a time. We are adjourned.